Wow. So you're telling me that if I was using regular radios, walkie-talkies, I like to call them walkie-talkies, but if I was using regular radios purchased off of Amazon, that anyone who bought that same radio could potentially listen to what we're talking about in the practice. Hey guys, welcome back to the Dental Office Managers Community Podcast. And today we're tackling something that sounds small, but quietly runs your entire day at the front desk. That is communication. Specifically, the walkie-talkies your team uses to find the doctor, flip a room, and let the front know that the next patient just walked through your door. Now, here's the thing. Most offices don't replace their radios because somebody sat down and made a decision. They replaced them because one finally died in the middle of a packed Tuesday. In over 2 decades around dental front offices, I've watched teams limp along on equipment that quits on them and just accept it as a normal thing. And I'll be honest with you, I use radios in my own office as well. So I know exactly what it feels like when the audio cuts out and you're standing there repeating yourself for the third time while a patient's waiting on you. So today's question is simple. When should you actually decide to retire the walkie-talkies you've got and move to something built for a dental practice like yours? To help me answer that, I've brought on someone who's doing this longer than just about anybody in the dental space. David started Black Diamond Radios back in 2002. And more than 20 years later, his team has put communication systems into over 17,000 dental practices across the United States. David, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'll correct you on that. It's about 17,000 customers, 7,000 dental practices.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. That's still a big number. That's a big accomplishment. And that really tells us something. You have the trust, you have the equipment that teams need, and you've built the trust over the years. So, David, before we get into the gear, take me back to 2002 when you started Black Diamond Radio around earpieces and all of those things. What did you see in offices back then that told you this was a real problem worth solving?
We entered the dental space in about 2005. Howard Farron wrote about us in Dental Town, and we had a whole bunch of people, and that let me know there was a need. From there, we sold earpieces to begin with, then we developed earpieces specifically, and then we developed a radio because we saw the market wasn't being well served.
Okay, now let's set the table, David, right? For the office managers that are listening to this in our community. When a dental team's communication is quietly broken, what does that actually look like on a business day? What are the symptoms most people don't even connect back to their radios?
Of course, when a radio doesn't work, the person who's supposed to receive the call, of course, doesn't know they didn't receive it. So once communication is a two-way street, it has to be a two-way street. And you don't always know the communication hasn't happened because if you're on the other side, think about if you're on the telephone and the other guy goes on mute. It's an accident. They're talking away. They think they've communicated everything to you. And in the meantime, all you heard was dead air. That can happen in any realm. It happens when batteries fail. It happens when earpieces fall out even. And so our purpose is to always put the most consistent, most reliable thing in somebody's ear that will never fail because you don't even know it's failed sometimes.
Yeah, and so I can attest to that. I was the victim of cheap Amazon walkie-talkie radios years ago, and we tried using them, and there were times they didn't work, right? And then we finally just gave up until I came across your table at a dental meeting. And so here's a big one for today, David, right? If someone's sitting there with a set of walkie-talkies that technically still turn on, okay, how do they know that it's time to retire them?
There's a lot of different factors, right? One can be batteries start failing. A battery costs about a fourth the price of the equipment. So say the equipment's a little bit older, you buy a new battery. After the first couple of years, that's a good idea. right? They last more than a couple of years, at least mine do. But after a while, the components inside, capacitors lose their charge, the controls get corroded and everything. And so now your communication has become less clear, less reliable. Just overall, your performance is not what you're there for, because what I want when I'm communicating with any device, but my radios especially, is you need it to be clear, you need it to be consistent, you need it to work every time. And this is the type of thing that age causes. So I'll give you, for instance, I've been making the same radio for for the dental market for 19 years. I have practices with 16-year-old radios. The radios are still working, but they're on their fifth battery. The communication starts getting scratchy, things like that. And the biggest challenge I have is then the office manager changes, a battery swells up, a radio dies. They're 13 years old, they're 15 years old. But that new manager, all they know is it doesn't work. And so this is my challenge, these things just don't work. No, they work great. They worked great for 15 years. Now, I will tell you that any walkie can communicate. I'm not just talking about only mine, right? A 2-year-old consumer walkie is going to sound terrible. The batteries are going to cost as much as the walkie. So there's something you should replace every year or two or more often. Often they fail more. You would know more about that than I do because you had to use them for years. I figure a 5 to 7 year lifespan is a good lifespan for one of my radios. You can keep it nursing along for 15, but your performance degrades.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I'd agree with you on that for sure. When I became an office manager of a practice, there was a lot of things that I showed up to, right? And just assumed that they were like that. And maybe as an office manager, now that I think back, maybe I should have questioned things. Maybe I should have asked questions and said, hey, were we using radios at the time? Or were they working? Was it benefiting the practice? And if so, let's get these things replaced or get the batteries replaced, right? So as I mentioned, David, a little bit earlier, I mentioned where I was the victim of the cheap Amazon radios, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, right? Because I made this mistake and I assumed that radios were just not a solution for us. However, over time, I reached for the radios in the first place because over time I realized that yelling across the way in the dental practice is just, it doesn't look good, right? Communication should be quiet within the team, especially when you're dealing with private health information. And so that was the original reason why I reached out to get those radios before I knew of your company. And so when they didn't work out because they died or the earpieces just were uncomfortable, it was hard to get everyone on board, everyone synced. With that being said, a lot of offices will grab a cheap set of big box store shelf radios, right? Like I said, I've done it myself, and they'll think that they're complete. Can you walk me through why the bargain radios cause more problems than they solve in a practice setting?
I sure can. Compliance is one of the hardest things. For compliance, you're going to need comfort. What you buy there is not comfortable. We make an earpiece very specifically to be used 12 hours a day. It's an industrial earpiece. It's not a child's toy. The radios need to be smaller and lighter. Nobody wants to carry around a brick. They have to be reliable. You will not get compliance if they're not reliable. The audio quality on a cheap radio, the audio quality is one of the biggest things. And it's one of my biggest things is to make sure the audio quality is exceptional. It has to be cell phone like. When you talk in that radio, whether you try hard to talk directly into a mic or whether you just whisper, it has to come out the other end clearly. And these, you can attest to this better than me, these are problems that what you find on Amazon have. Essentially, you're taking a child's toy and using it in a multi-million-dollar business. It's not always a good choice. Yes, it's cheap, but there's cost for that. I set out to make the most comfortable, durable, and still affordable radio. Don't get the idea that it makes it very expensive. Most offices can outfit the entire office for well under the price of a single crown. And it will last you for years and years. Instead of creating problems, I solve all of the communication problems. When you use the wrong thing, it's kind of using the old X-ray machine. Okay, it'll still give you an X-ray. You can still see what's wrong with that tooth, but you had to buy film. You had to develop film. You had all kinds of things to do. Whereas nowadays, you just take a sensor, and 6 seconds later, you're looking at the problem, and you can solve it.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. I like the way you said a child's toy for a multi-million-dollar practice, and it's true. And it's, so again, I've experienced that firsthand. Originally, we thought, let's go cheap. Let's go on Amazon. Let's just buy these radios. And then adoption was a little bit complicated. I had to get the doctor on board. The doctor was used to screaming down the hall, "Hey, Kyle, hey, Lena." It was a habit and it was routine. And I'll actually share a story with you. When my wife came into the dental office for the very first time, she wasn't my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend. But when she came in, she sat in the waiting room and we were wrapping up. And after we leave the practice, she says to me, she goes, "Why does he yell at you like that?" And I said, "He's not yelling at me. He's just asking me to come to the operatory to talk to the patient." And she's like, "That's not very professional." I said, "I know." And so being that you and I met at that conference, it was actually perfect timing because she had actually experienced that not too short time before you and I met each other at that conference. But yeah, look, talk about privacy, right? Those are one of probably the most important topics in a dental practice: private health information, HIPAA, everything like that. How do you handle keeping communication discreet so it isn't carrying down the hall or getting picked up by the wrong ears? Let's say a different channel or something like that. Where does HIPAA come into the conversation?
It's actually throughout the conversation. It starts with talking into the mic. I've been designing earpieces for 25 years. With mine, you do not have to yell into the earpiece. You can whisper, and you don't want to make things very clear. The next thing, and it has to come out the other side, clear as though you're in the same room. The next thing is what goes in your ear, and it has to have pretty low volume, but be clear and readable. We use a little ear mold. We call it a semi-custom ear mold that puts the sound exactly inside your ear. It isn't on the outside of your ear like you'll see some earpieces. You'll see what they're using at Target or something, and you can hear what's going on because it's actually a speaker outside the ear. So that's that part of the communication. The rest is that we use only business frequencies. Here's a funny thing about what's being sold on Amazon now. I see things and they're called business radios. They're on what's called the family radio spectrum. They're not business radios. They're black radios. You literally just make a consumer radio look like a business radio. It's on consumer frequencies. Every construction worker, every kid on a skateboard, and every trucker can hear everything you say. With mine, we actually encrypt all of the digital signal so that nobody can listen. They have to have an encryption key. It's actually a government level encryption. You do not hear it unless it's for you. And so those are some of the things. We've been concerned about HIPAA since we first started in dental practices. At the very beginning, people were using other radios and they were using consumer radios. It's one of the reasons we developed a radio specifically for practices.
Wow. So you're telling me that if I was using regular radios, walkie-talkies, I like to call them walkie-talkies, but if I was using regular radios purchased off of Amazon, that anyone who bought that same radio could potentially listen to what we're talking about in the practice.
It's a lot worse than that. It's that anyone who bought any radio that's on the family radio spectrum, which is everything you buy at Bass Pro Shops, everything you buy on Amazon, everything you buy at Walmart, all of them can listen to everything said on your channels.
Wow. And so yours are encrypted, and anyone who uses your radios does not have to worry about that.
Exactly. And they're on business-only frequencies as well, so you don't have interference, which at very least causes bad audio quality. at very worst, causes people to actually understand what's going on. And neither of those things actually can happen with what we're building.
Wow. Okay. All right, Dave. So say I'm convinced and I want to upgrade my radio or take the current Amazon radios and throw them right in the garbage where they belong.
Don't do that. I'm going to give you a trade-in on those junk radios.
So don't throw them out. Okay. Okay. So now that you mentioned that, Dave, share the trade-in deal with us. Share that with us.
Okay. So what we're going to do is, for all the radios you have, whether they're mine or someone else's, we're going to give you $35 a radio against our radio. It's going to cut the cost substantially. When you're upgrading mine and you're at the point where you're needing batteries, this basically ends up at half off the price of a battery plus the discount. With those other radios, it's a very substantial discount. It's about 20%.
Wow. Okay. So if I have 10 radios from Amazon or from wherever, 10 radios, I trade them in to you, I get $35 credit per radio.
That's right, exactly.
$350 off. Perfect. That's amazing. Okay, great. Okay, now Dave, office managers have to justify spend to the doctor, right? Yeah. Who's typically watching every dollar. We know this. How do you frame the value here? So as an office manager, so it's not just another line item. It's time and stress to the team that they get back.
We have white papers that do a lot better job of this, but there's so many efficiencies. First off, there's the professionalism in the appearance to your client. There's the amount of time. Say you're using Amazon radios. The time involved in diagnosing and trying to get them running and ordering more is a lot more than the cost of industrial radios. In the realm of the practice itself, you can attest better than I can to what efficiencies you get. The number one I always think of is the hygienist, because I know that the longest 30 seconds on earth is 30 seconds that I'm in a dental chair and no one else is in the room. And when a hygienist is looking for an exam and has to leave the room and go look somewhere else, or is yelling at somebody, that's a big deal to the patient, and it's a big inefficiency. So say your practice has 3 docs. With 3 docs, one is in the hall almost always. When a hygienist can just say, I need an exam in 2, and keep working, never leave their patient, stay professional, and that one doc in the hallway can just walk in, examine real quick and say, biopsy that, don't biopsy that. You just saved a lot of time for your client, you've saved a lot of time for your hygienist, and you've looked extremely professional, right? Getting treatment coordinators into the room. Personally, I'm really big on the never leaving people alone in the chair thing, because my biggest experience in a dental office is in that chair. And I can tell you, I hate those minutes in the chair by myself.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Patients don't like sitting in the chair unattended, especially if they're like anxious patients. But yeah, Dave, so listen, thanks for the special offer for the community. This was a great podcast, and I think a lot of office managers just got permission to stop tolerating something that they've been working around for years. And so really, for everybody who's listening, Black Diamond Radios has been doing this for over 20 years for a reason. David's team knows the dental world specifically and what matters. If your radios are cutting out, if your team's repeating themselves, or you're still on whatever you grabbed off a shelf a few years ago, maybe it was Amazon, this is worth a real look. Okay, and because you're part of the DOMC, Dental Office Managers Community family, David has put together the special offer just for you guys. And I'm going to drop it in the comments section of this video here. So if you guys are ready to switch your radios to something that is, one, HIPAA compliant, protecting your patient's health information, as well as reliable, then I want you guys to click that link below in this video. Reach out to David, and he's going to hook you guys up. David, thanks so much for being on with me today.
Can I have just 20 more seconds, Kyle?
Sure.
Okay, what I want to say is that when you call my office, a human answers the phone. They know about radios. The second thing I want to say is anyone who brings our radios in, we do an unboxing and we help and make sure that it's a successful implementation for you. And last, When you start working with Black Diamond, it's the beginning of a relationship, not the end. We are there for you.
Love it. Love it, David. Yeah, David, thank you so much. This was great. And I appreciate you being on here today. And again, I appreciate you being a trusted partner of the dental office managers community. And I look forward to working with you and seeing you at another conference soon.
Thanks, Kyle. Always a pleasure.
Take care. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode of the Dental Office Managers Community Podcast. See you soon.